we're dreaming of reaching our first 1,000 subscribers. Subscribe and be the first to discover new stories every day. I came up behind Lauren in the kitchen, the air heavy with the smell of garlic and onions. She was at the counter, chopping carrots with a sharp thwack, her movements jerky, like she was taking out her day on the cutting board. I slid my arms around her waist. Light, no pressure, just the usual move we'd done 1,000 times. My chin brushed her shoulder, her sweater soft against my skin. She froze, then shrugged me off like I'd touched her with a wet rag. My hands dropped, a hot spike of adrenaline burning in my chest, my lips pressed tight. I stepped back, staring at her profile, lips pursed, eyes glued to the carrots like I wasn't even there. "You've changed, Jake," she said, her voice flat, like she was reading a grocery list. "You're not the guy I want to touch anymore." My pulse slammed into my throat, my fingers twitching like they wanted to move. Not worth touching. After 8 years, 2 cross-country moves, and a life we'd patched together through late-night fights and morning coffee. That's her opening line? I swallowed, a knot in my throat, and locked eyes with her. She didn't flinch, just kept chopping, the knife hitting harder, like she was carving me out. "Okay," I said, my voice low and sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. "But from now on, don't whine when I keep my hands to myself. Deal's done." Her knife stopped mid-chop, her shoulders stiffening, but she didn't look up. My pulse thudded in my temples, my back stiff as a board. I didn't slam the door or demand answers. I turned, walked to the living room, and dropped onto the couch, the leather creaking under me. Something in me shut off. Call it care, call it effort. Done. "You coming to bed?" she called, her voice light, but with that testing edge, like she was poking to see if I'd bite. "Nah," I said, my tone flat, eyes on my phone, scrolling some ex-post about cars I didn't care about. "I'm good here." Silence. I could feel her staring through the wall, waiting for me to crack. My shoulders were tense, a dull ache settling in my neck, but I didn't move. She wanted a reaction. She wasn't getting one. The next morning, I was at the kitchen counter, sipping coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. Lauren breezed past, reaching for her mug, her arm brushing mine, deliberate, like she was testing the waters again. My skin prickled, a burn in my chest, but I stepped aside, smooth, like she'd bumped me by accident. Her hand froze midair, her lips parting slightly, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "You okay, Jake?" she asked, her voice soft but probing, like she was fishing for a fight. "Peachy," I said, my tone dry, eyes on my phone. "Just respecting your boundaries, Lauren. You said I'm not worth touching, right? I'm just following your rules." Her mug clinked hard against the counter, her cheeks flushing. "That's not what I meant," she said, her voice sharper, stumbling over her words. God, you're taking it all wrong." I looked up, raising an eyebrow, my lips pressed so hard they ached. "All wrong," I said, my voice low but biting. "You said it to my face, Lauren. You're not just venting, you're trying to push me around." "Not happening." She opened her mouth, then closed it, her hands gripping the mug like it was a lifeline. "I was just frustrated, okay?" she muttered, her voice dropping, almost tripping over itself. "Frustrated." I laughed, short and sharp, a knot tightening in my gut. "You don't get to sling that at me and call it a mood swing. You meant it. Own it." She turned away, her shoulders stiff, pouring coffee with shaky hands. My pulse was steady, but my fingers tapped the counter, the tension coiling in my chest. She wanted to play victim. I wasn't buying it. 2 days later, we were in the car, driving to her friend Haley's place in the suburbs. The radio hummed low, some pop song I didn't know, and Lauren was tapping her knee, her eyes out the window. The silence was thick, like static you could feel. My hands gripped the wheel, my knuckles pale, a dull burn spreading in my chest. "You've been weird all week," she said suddenly, her voice sharp, cutting through the hum of the engine. "What's your deal, Jake? You're acting like I'm the bad guy here." I kept my eyes on the road, my lips pressed tight. "My deal," I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. "You told me I'm not worth touching, Lauren. Now you're mad I'm not chasing you? That's your game, not mine." She turned in her seat, her eyes flashing, her voice rising. "God, you're blowing this way out of proportion." I said one thing, Jake, one thing. Now you're, what, punishing me? I laughed, low and cold, my fingers twitching on the wheel. "Punishing you," I said, Glancing at her, my eyebrow raised. You're not frustrated? Lauren, you're testing me. You want me to grovel? I'm not playing. Her face flushed, her hands balling into fists in her lap. You're so damn sensitive, she snapped, her voice loud, almost shrill, tripping over her words. Can't you just let it go? Let it go, I said, my voice sharp, my eyes flicking to her. You threw a jab and expected me to smile. Here's the deal, Lauren, you keep pushing, you're gonna be pushing alone. She crossed her arms, her breathing fast, her eyes glaring out the windshield. You're impossible, she muttered, her voice low, venomous. You used to care. I smirked, a cold knot in my throat. Care, I said, my voice cold. I cared plenty, but I'm not your doormat. You want respect? Try giving it first. The car went silent, the tension like a live wire. My shoulders were stiff, a burn in my chest, but my head was clear. She was fishing for control, and I wasn't handing it over. When we pulled up to Haley's, she was waiting outside, all smiles in her yoga pants and oversized sweater. I got out, stretched my legs, the ache in my back easing, and grinned at her. Haley, you're looking great, I said, keeping it light but genuine, my hands in my pockets. Thanks, Jake, she said, her voice warm, her smile wide. Lauren's head snapped toward me, her eyes narrowing, a twitch at the corner of her mouth. Jealousy? Over that. My fingers twitched in my pockets, a smirk tugging at my lips. Inside, they started chatting about curtains and some Netflix show, their voices bouncing around Haley's living room. I grabbed a soda from the fridge, the cold can soothing against my palm, and leaned against the counter. Lauren reached for my hand at one point, her fingers brushing mine, testing again. I pulled back, smooth, like I was just adjusting my stance. Her hand froze, and I saw Haley's eyes flick between us, her smile faltering, a burn spreading in my chest. Everything okay with you too? Haley asked, her voice casual but curious, her eyes on Lauren. Fine, Lauren said quickly, her tone too bright, her fingers twitching on her glass. I sipped my soda, the fizz sharp on my tongue, and said nothing. Later, in the kitchen, I overheard Haley's hushed voice. Is he leaving you or what? She asked, a mix of worry and gossip in her tone. Lauren didn't answer. A cold satisfaction settled in my gut, my fingers gripping the can tighter, the metal creaking. She was feeling the shift, and I wasn't explaining it. The next week, Lauren decided to host a dinner for her coworkers. Show them you're real, she said over breakfast, smirking across the table, her coffee mug steaming. They think I made you up. I leaned back in my chair, my coffee warm in my hands, and raised an eyebrow. Made me up, I said, my voice dry, a smirk tugging at my lips. What? I'm your imaginary husband now. She laughed, but it was sharp, like she was covering something. Just come, okay? She said, her tone coaxing. Be charming. You're good at that when you try. I didn't argue. I helped set up, chopped vegetables, drove to the store for sparkling water and juice. No alcohol, per her rules. By 7, our dining room was packed. Mark, the loud sales guy with a fake laugh, Priya, the quiet analyst who kept to herself, and a handful of others I barely knew. Lauren was in her element, tossing her hair, laughing too loud, playing the perfect host. She sat next to Mark, their chairs so close their elbows brushed. A burn flared in my chest, my lips pressed tight, but I kept slicing bread, my knife steady. Halfway through dinner, Lauren leaned forward, her glass of sparkling water in hand, and went for her usual play. Let's jab at Jake in front of everyone. You know, she said, her voice loud, a teasing edge to it. Jake's gotten so predictable lately. Like a cozy blanket. Warm, sure, but kinda boring. A few people chuckled, awkward, their eyes darting to their plates. My pulse slammed into my temples, my fingers twitching around my glass, but I kept my face calm, a cold smile curling my lips. She wasn't done. Back in the day, there was fire, you know, she went on, her tone light but biting, her eyes flicking to me. Now it's like I'm splitting bills with my roommate. The table went quiet. Priya stared at her plate, her fork frozen. Mark coughed into his napkin, his face red. A couple of others glanced at the floor, their shoulders stiff. I set my glass down, the clink loud in the silence, and looked at Lauren, my smile cold and sharp. You just told everyone you don't respect your husband. I said, my voice low but clear, slicing through the room. You're not joking, Lauren. You're putting on a show to make me chase you. I'm not biting. Her face froze, her mouth half open, her cheeks flushing. The air was thick, everyone holding their breath. My heart pounded, my lips pressed so hard they ached, but my face stayed calm. Thanks for the performance, I said, my tone ice cold but steady. But you just canceled it yourself. In front of your audience. No encores. I stood, my chair scraping softly against the hardwood. Nobody looked at me, their eyes glued to their plates or the tablecloth. Lauren stammered, her voice shaky. Jake, come on, don't. I didn't wait. I walked out, my steps calm, a knot in my throat. My hands were clenched in my pockets, my pulse loud in my ears, but my head was clear. I didn't grab my keys or pack a bag. I didn't need to. I'd cut the cord. A few days later, we were in the car again, heading to a family barbecue at her sister Claire's place. The air was thick, the radio off, just the hum of the engine and her tapping foot. My hands were steady on the wheel, but a burn spread in my chest, my gut telling me she'd try something. You're still mad about the dinner, aren't you? She said, her voice sharp, cutting through the silence. God, Jake, you're acting like a kid, sulking like this. I laughed, low and cold, my fingers twitching on the wheel. A kid, I said, my tone biting, glancing at her. You humiliated me in front of your coworkers, Lauren. Called me boring, a roommate. And I'm the one sulking. She crossed her arms, her voice rising, stumbling over her words. You're so sensitive. It was a joke, okay? Why can't you just laugh it off? A joke, I said, my voice sharp, my eyes flicking to her. You're not joking, Lauren. You're testing me, trying to make me jealous or grovel. I'm not your puppet. Her face flushed, her hands balling into fists in her lap. You're threatening me? She snapped, her voice loud, almost shrill. After everything I've done? I smirked, a cold knot in my throat. Done, I said, my voice cold. Like what? Trashing me to feel better about yourself? You're not doing me favors. Lauren, you're digging your own grave. She turned away, her breathing fast, her eyes glaring out the windshield. You're impossible, she muttered, her voice low, venomous. You used to be fun. Fun, I said, my tone sharp, my back stiff as a board. I was fun when I let you walk all over me. Sorry, babe, that deal's expired. The car went silent, the tension like a storm cloud. My shoulders were tense, a burn in my chest, but my head was clear. She was grasping for control, and I wasn't giving it up. At Claire's barbecue, the backyard was packed. Family, friends, kids running around with water guns. Claire, Lauren's older sister, was the loud, opinionated type, always ready to stir the pot. Lauren was in her element, laughing with Claire, her voice carrying over the crowd. I grabbed a soda, leaned against a patio table, my fingers twitching around the can, a dull ache in my neck. Claire caught my eye, smirking, and called out, Jake, you're quiet today? Lauren says you've been all moody lately. What's up with that? Lauren laughed, her tone teasing but sharp, her eyes on me. Yeah, he's been sulking, she said, loud enough for heads to turn. Ever since I said he's gotten a bit dull. A few people chuckled, their eyes flicking to me, then away. My pulse spiked, my lips pressed so hard they ached, my fingers gripping the soda can until it creaked. I set it down, slow, and stepped forward, my smile cold and sharp. Dull, I said, my voice low but carrying, my eyes locked on Lauren. That's rich, Lauren. You're not just chatting with Claire, you're making sure I hear it, hoping I'll jump to prove you wrong. I'm not your show pony. Her face flushed, her mouth opening, then closing. Claire's smirk faltered, her eyes darting to Lauren. The crowd went quiet, the air heavy. My heart pounded, a burn spreading in my chest, but my hands were steady. Jake, that's not fair, Lauren said, her voice shaky, stumbling over her words. I was kidding, okay? Kidding, I said, my tone biting, stepping closer. You've been kidding for months, Lauren. Calling me boring, predictable, not worth touching. You think that's a joke? The punchline's you, wondering why I'm done. Claire coughed, looking away, her hands fidgeting with her drink. Lauren's eyes glistened, her voice trembling. Jake, what the hell? She said, low but loud enough for the crowd. You're making me look like an idiot. I laughed, short and cold, my jaw tight. Making you look bad, I said, my voice sharp. You've been doing that yourself, Lauren. And I'm not cleaning up your mess anymore. I turned, my steps calm, a knot in my throat. The crowd parted, their whispers following me. I didn't look back. The next test came at Lauren's office holiday party, a glitzy setup at a downtown hotel. She'd begged me to come, her voice sweet over the phone, like she could rewind everything. It'll be fun, she said, her tone coaxing. We can start fresh. I went, not because I bought it, but because I knew she'd pull something, and I was ready. My suit felt stiff, my tie too tight, but I kept my shoulders back, my face calm. The ballroom was packed, co-workers in cocktail dresses and suits, clinking glasses of sparkling cider, the air thick with perfume and fake laughs. Lauren was working the room, her red dress catching the light, her laugh loud and performative. I stayed by the bar, sipping a soda, my eyes scanning the crowd. My pulse was steady, my fingers twitching around the glass, ready for her next move. She found me an hour in, her arm looping through mine, her smile too bright. Having fun? She asked, her voice sugary, her fingers tight on my sleeve. Sure, I said, my tone flat, my eyes on the crowd. I didn't pull away, but I didn't lean in, a dull ache settling in my neck. She tugged me toward a group, Mark, Priya, and some guy named Dave. Guys, you remember Jake, she said, her voice loud, her hand still on my arm. My husband who's too cool for us now. The group laughed, strained, their eyes flicking to me. My pulse spiked, my lips pressed tight, but I kept my face neutral, a smirk playing on my lips. Too cool, I said, my voice light but sharp. Nah, just tired of being your punchline, Lauren. Her smile faltered, her grip tightening on my arm. Oh, come on, she said, her voice teasing but nervous, stumbling slightly. You know I'm kidding. You're still my favorite guy. Favorite guy, I said, raising an eyebrow, my tone cold. Last week, I was a boring blanket. Last month, I wasn't worth touching. You're not joking, Lauren, you're fishing for a reaction. I'm not biting. Her face flushed, her eyes darting to her co-workers, who shifted uncomfortably. Dave cleared his throat, looking away. Priya's eyes were on her glass, her lips tight. Lauren laughed, a brittle sound, her hand dropping from my arm. You're so sensitive, she said. Her voice sharp, trying to flip it. Can't you just take a joke? I stepped closer, my voice low, my eyes locked on hers. A joke's funny, Lauren, I said, my tone biting, a burn in my chest. Humiliating your husband to get him to chase you? That's just pathetic. The group went quiet, the air heavy. My heart pounded, my fingers twitching in my pockets, but my face stayed calm. Lauren's mouth opened, then closed, her cheeks red. Jake, stop, she said, her voice trembling, tripping over her words. Stop, I said, my voice sharp, cutting. You started this. You want to play games, do it without me. I turned, my steps calm, a knot in my throat. My hands were steady, but my pulse was loud in my ears. The crowd parted, their whispers trailing me. I didn't look back. A month later, I ran into Haley at a coffee shop downtown. The place smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon, the hum of conversation filling the air. She spotted me in line, waved me over, and we sat at a corner table, the wooden surface scratched from years of use. Her eyes were serious, no trace of her usual bubbly energy. She's a mess, you know, Haley said, stirring her latte, her spoon clinking against the cup. Lauren, she's been crying to me about how you're different now. I sipped my coffee, my fingers tight around the mug, a dull ache in my neck. Different, I said, my voice dry, raising an eyebrow. She said I'm boring, Haley. Said it to my face, then doubled down in front of her co-workers. What did she expect? Haley sighed, her shoulders slumping, her eyes on the table. She's not evil, Jake, she said, her voice quiet. She's just lost, always chasing something she can't name. I nodded, my lips pressed tight, my fingers tapping the mug. I get it, I said, my tone even. But I'm not her therapist. Or her punching bag. Haley gave me a small smile, her eyes softening. You're better than she deserves, she said, her voice steady. Don't let her drag you down with her. My chest loosened, just a fraction, a burn fading in my gut. Haley saw me, not the guy Lauren painted, but the one who was done with her games. I thanked her, paid for her coffee, and left, the cool air hitting my face as I stepped outside, my steps lighter. The final straw came at a barbecue at Mark's place, a sprawling backyard affair with string lights and kids running around. Lauren insisted we go, probably to save face after the dinner and holiday party disasters. I agreed, a burn in my chest, my gut telling me this was her last shot to pull me back in. The yard was packed, co-workers, neighbors, the smell of grilled burgers and smoke thick in the air. Lauren was in full performance mode, laughing too loud, touching people's arms, making sure everyone noticed her. I hung back, sipping a soda, my eyes on her, my fingers twitching around the can. She sidled up to Mark, leaning in close, her hand on his shoulder as she laughed at some dumb joke. Her eyes flicked to me, testing, waiting for a reaction. I caught Priya's eye across the yard. She looked away, her face tense. I set my drink down, the can clinking on the table, and walked over, my steps deliberate, my lips pressed so hard they ached. "Hey, Mark," I said, my voice friendly but sharp, cutting through their laughter. "Mind giving my wife some space? She's not just flirting with you. She's making sure I see it." Mark froze, his face red, his beer halfway to his mouth. Lauren spun toward me, her eyes blazing, her voice loud enough to turn heads. "Jake, what the hell?" she snapped, her hands on her hips, her cheeks flushed. "You're making me look like an idiot." I smiled, cold and calm, my hands in my pockets. "Making you look bad," I said, my voice carrying, sharp but steady. "You've been trashing me for months, Lauren. Calling me boring, predictable, not worth touching. You're not joking, you're trying to control me. I'm done with your script." The backyard went silent, the hum of conversation gone. Neighbors stared, their burgers forgotten. Priya's eyes were wide, her hand covering her mouth. Mark stepped back, muttering something about the grill. Lauren's face was red, her hands trembling, her voice shaky but loud. "Seriously, Jake?" she said, her voice cracking, stumbling over her words. "Over this? You're throwing away 8 years. Here's as good as anywhere," I said, my voice low, like a blade, my eyes locked on hers. "You don't respect me, Lauren. That's fine. But you don't get to keep me around to prop up your ego. We're done." Her laugh was nervous, brittle, her eyes darting to the crowd. "Over this?" she said, her voice trembling. You're walking away, just like that?" "Just like that," I said, my tone like steel, stepping closer, a burn in my chest. "You thought you could tear me down, and I'd keep running back. Bad call, Lauren. Game over." I turned, my steps calm, my heart pounding, my fingers twitching in my pockets. The crowd was silent, their eyes on the ground or their drinks. Lauren called after me, her voice desperate. "Jake, wait." I didn't. I walked away, my head clear, my breathing steady. My chest was tight, but not with pain, with freedom. 3 months later, I'm in a new apartment downtown, a 1-bedroom with big windows and no clutter. The place is quiet, clean mine. Work's good. I'm up for a promotion, and my mornings are my own. No eggshells, no games. My shoulders are loose, my sleep deep. Lauren texted me a week after the barbecue, her words dripping with self-pity. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain," she wrote. I didn't reply with words. I sent her a voice clip from the dinner party, her own voice calling me a boring blanket, mocking me in front of her friends. No text, no explanation. Just her words, sharp and final. Last week, I ran into her at the grocery store, in the cereal aisle. She looked tired, her hair in a messy bun, no makeup, her cart half empty with random items. She saw me, froze, then tried to smile, her lips trembling. "Jake," she said, her voice soft, almost broken. "I messed up. I didn't mean half the things I said." I looked at her, my hands in my pockets, my face calm, my pulse steady. "You meant every word," I said, my voice cold and steady, lips twitching into a smirk. "You wanted to play me like a pawn, Lauren. Now you get to live with an empty board." Her eyes welled up, her hands gripping the cart handle, her knuckles white. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice shaking, tripping over itself. I didn't know what I was losing. I nodded, my lips pressed tight, a cold knot in my throat. "Yeah," I said, my voice sharp, final. "You wanted to play me like a pawn, Lauren. Now you get to live with an empty board." I walked to the checkout, my cart light, my heart steady.